Mr. Speaker, in the past 2 months, the headlines in the United Kingdom have been about an NHS in crisis. Just in the past 7 days, the headlines and news reports of the NHS could not have been worse. One report refers to NHS surgeons kicking their heels as bed shortage delays operations, with senior health officials warning of shocking waste because beds are being taken up by patients waiting for community social care. As honourable members know, that is not the case in Gibraltar's GHA. And the professionalism of our staff produced at a GHA today that is not by a country mile, Mr. Speaker, suffering a crisis like the NHS. Given the really quite dreadful statistics for average waiting times at A&E in the United Kingdom NHS, I sincerely do believe that we must congratulate the GHA for these average waiting times.
So it turns out that at least in the subject of healthcare, and particularly when it comes to accident and emergency, we're much better off in Gibraltar than we are in the UK. But how else do we compare to the United Kingdom? Are we better off in terms of, I don't know, civil protection, leisure, sport, home ownership? We're going to go through them all tonight on City Pulse. That's the subject we've chosen for tonight's programme. How we compare with the UK. Are we better off? Are we worse off? Do we know? And my co-hosts for the evening, Julian Felice and Kevin Rees. Gentlemen, good evening to you.
Good evening.
And of course, all the usual features, the motion, the press review, and look at this. Isn't it beautiful?
It is,
this
actually.
is the trophy that will go towards the winner of this season's Who Said What. Julian, of course, storming into the lead this week. Neck and neck with Rebecca Fowler. There's only another 2 programmes left for the programme for this season. And of course, next week will be the last one where the points count, because on the final programme of the series, we'll have the winner and the trophy awarded to the winner. So let's dive into this week's subject. How much better off are we with the UK compared to the UK? Now, we know that, for example, these statistics were presented to us in Parliament, A&E. We have an average waiting time of about an hour and a half compared to the UK, where they're waiting in the corridors and in caretakers' cabinets and stuff like that. But generally, I mean, in terms of healthcare?
It's a bit of a mixed one, I think. You just said waiting in A&E an hour and a half, but I was reading other stats, and apparently there were people who were waiting for almost half a day there. And then it's down to experiences as well. I think we've all gone down there at some point, unfortunately. And I don't know about you guys, my last experience, I was there for 4 and a bit hours. Then again,
but waiting to see a consultant at A&E?
Yeah. But then again, you know...
Because these are average times, but there may be some people that go straight in.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they have, like, chest pains and then they see them immediately.
Exactly. So, I mean, I couldn't really say based on my experience, because mine is based on the one isolated day. Do we fare well? Well, I think, we've got it good. Could be better, like anything and everything. And where we don't, I mean, we do get sent to the UK on sponsored patient programs and the like. So are we, you know, do we have it good? Yeah, we have it good. Could be improved. And where we don't, we have mechanisms in place to allow us to access a better service. Bit of a mixed one, really.
a good person to talk to, because you lived in the UK for 10 years.
Yeah. I spent, between studying and working, I spent 10 years in the UK. You know, and the first thing I'll say is that it's not a very fair comparison. No, we're two completely different kettles of fish. No,
I agree.
I mean, in the UK, we would essentially be a small town, really. No, but obviously we are a small town with the needs and ambitions of a country, you know, so that obviously has a bearing. But in terms of a comparison point, I don't think they're entirely fair. But you know, I can certainly say that the quality of healthcare here is much better than what I experienced in the UK. Not that I experienced very much, but I remember, for example, wanted to see a doctor. I think it's because it was something quite minor, flu or something like that, and asked for an appointment to a doctor. I couldn't get one for 2 days after, by which point I'd recovered. No, so to be fair, the NHS does get a very bad press, a very undeserved press, I think. But here, because we've got the ambitions of a country, but perhaps the population of a small town, we get unbelievable advantages. No, when my daughter was born, for example, my wife had the whole of the maternity ward to herself. You know, so a handful of midwives and the support staff and doctors to herself, which is nothing you'd experience.
The maternity ward.
Yes,
in particular. I suppose that because it's such an emotional experience, and you always want to speak highly of the people that have been with you during that. Whereas every other situation that you go to the hospital for is probably a negative one.
Exactly.
Our local hospital, I mean, it's a local hospital to us, but in the UK equivalent would be probably a regional hospital where you'd have to travel for a certain amount of time just to get there. I mean, yes, some of the regional hospitals have bigger services and maybe even better services, but they're not a short drive away, you know?
They might not have a dialysis unit for a start. They might not have in-house chemotherapy.
Some of them don't even have an A&E. A&E is a big issue in the UK. There's some local communities where there's no local A&E service. You have to go quite far out of the local region to access an A&E. So we talk about the waiting time at A&E, but perhaps we should also be talking about the kind of access time just to get there in the first place.
Exactly,
But I certainly think that we have a good service here. But of course, when you have a good service, people want better, don't they? And
I suppose that healthcare is one of those issues where, when it appears on the press, it only ever appears on the press for the wrong reasons. And you always see, if there's a big sheet of white paper and you see one little black dot on it, you always focus on the black dot without focusing on the rest of the whites.
Yeah, it happens with everything. Yeah, I think so. But I mean, going back to, I think, an important point Julian mentioned as well, are we better in terms of the care? Probably. I mean, health, it's all about a caring profession, and it's magnified even more here again because we're a small community, the familiarity as well. So you're going in and it's very likely the person who's there to look after you or to help you, you probably know them or have a family connection or some sort of connection. So, that's a positive, a major positive that most places can't boast about.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to have that heightened attention and heightened care because you're known to that person. And I think that is something which will sway it in favour of, yes, we have it better off. But then, obviously, there's other aspects to it, the structure, the infrastructure, the facilities and the setup. And maybe that's where, obviously, we can have a better service. What can we afford to?
One area where I thought the UK service had it sussed really was in the area of repeat prescriptions, because in certainly where we were based, we didn't have to go to see a doctor to get a repeat prescription, whereas here that was the case until only a few weeks ago. And I remember all these years kind of advocating, why is it that for simple and repeat prescription we have to go and see a doctor? That clogs up the health service. And it finally seems that message, at least we're mirroring that practice. No? Another useful service we had in the UK, of course, which I don't think could be made available here, was the NHS Direct, which basically meant that you could contact the NHS telephone and speak to a trained advisor, and who could give you some guidance over the phone, no, and that was very helpful because again it helps to declog the health service.
Jonathan had a brilliant idea on the show a few weeks ago. I don't know if you watched, where he actually suggested that we can sort of like get our own sick notes online.
Yes.
Remember that?
I said that.
Yeah, we said that a few weeks ago.
It sounds like something I would say, but not on air.
Yeah, we had a discussion about health. Well, obviously we had a discussion on health and it came up. We're talking about the repeat prescriptions and, this was in relation to, people being advised not to attend to the health centre.
Oh, yes, of course. We were talking about the flu.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Because that's a problem.
But these facilities are available in the UK.
If you've got a good service and it's free, people are going to access it, not perhaps unnecessarily. And I don't think that's a problem just here. That tends to happen in quite a lot of places where perhaps of a slight misuse of the service. Not too many people going to the health centre perhaps unnecessarily. But of course, we're not doctors, so we can't really make that decision.
Okay. Let's move on to other areas that we can compare ourselves to the UK. Let's talk about civil protection. I remember spending 4 years in the UK and only ever seeing a policeman on a handful of times. And here you see them every day. But of course, the difference is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in the UK, police forces don't police in their own communities.
Yeah.
They always police
Outside.
in a nearby town,
That's right, yeah.
or just outside, or perhaps in a metropolitan area that's near that town. But they don't police their own community because they consider it a conflict of interest,
That's
because
right.
you know everyone. And in Gibraltar, we don't have a choice.
There's no
we
choice.
don't have an option.
Exactly.
So we tend to police ourselves.
Yeah.
It just seems like an alien concept to any police officer outside, but yet police officers go about their duty and...
And again, it's a double-edged sword again, and it's also one where familiarity and local connections can aid the police officer
absolutely.
in their job, but at the same time, it also can cause a lot of problems. But yes, again, I would probably say we have it better off there as well, because there's a deeper understanding, and I mean, it's a police officer's duty as well to understand the intimacies of the community they serve. And, you know, being Gibraltarian and policing a place like Gibraltar, you know, just the very nature of being a Gibraltarian, you are very aware of the intimacies of the makeup of the community.
You know the people.
Exactly. You know the people, you got the connections, and you can gauge situations as well. You can understand situations, you can understand incidents that occur, why they occur, you know, family backgrounds, so you know how to avoid situations, or you can understand why
You're always a lot, from the point of view of the client, from the point of view of the individual who might require civil protection. There's the point that, of course, you're always a lot closer to a police officer than you are in the UK, where you might live in some rural areas and you're several kilometres away from a police station.
Yeah.
And I think in the UK, the role of the traditional British bobby has changed a lot. No, I mean, if you watch any kind of kids' TV programme, as I seem to spend most of my time doing, and there's always a character who is the local bobby, you know, and the friendly policeman with a big smile and a black bicycle who kind of comes by every day. The reality is very different. No, there, I suppose, the police played a very preventative role, whereas now I think their role is more reactive. No, they're reacting to situations which are more serious. No, there's a lot more armed police, etc. I remember actually being in the UK when the July the 7th bombings happened, and my wife was actually working in London on that day, no, and when you're not in that area, as I wasn't, I was doing my teacher training actually, so I wasn't at home, I wasn't in London. You know, there's such a concern about that, but from what I understood, everything was organised very well for being such a big event, such an emergency. No, it's just that obviously you had to go out of your routine, your normal commuting routine, and everything. But I remember being quite impressed by how everything seemed to be handled, and I think that's quite comforting.
I suppose that in a place like Gibraltar, you feel a certain kinship with people who... in the UK, for example, you have certain communities, like you've got neighbourhood watches.
Yeah.
In Gibraltar, there is kind of like... There's an alternative to that, which is like the neighbourhood estates, because in Gibraltar we have estates. I mean, you've got high-rise buildings and you've got people living in tower blocks. And
they're becoming very active, and they have become very active, especially with the dawn of social media. Where
exactly,
you know, and,
you've got for
everybody's
example,
posting anything and
Beach
everything
terraces,
suspicious on there.
Monscalpa Views have their own community web pages. Waterport
Down to
Terraces
really
residents have their
micro
own as
issues,
well, and they tend to kind of like form their own little neighbourhood watch thing, but almost informal and unofficial.
Yeah. But it works. It works, and well, to the point you get all sorts of micro issues discussed on there. No? But it works. I mean, and we tend to police ourselves in every aspect, so that's another plus as well. No, I think we have it good in terms of policing, but then again, you know, because of my background, I might be a bit biased towards it, but I think we have it good.
What about in terms of, I mean, this is something that people always moan about, consumer choice. I'm going to tell you a little anecdote, something that happened today. I went out to buy a shower curtain rail. It just seems like such a simple thing that most people would have in stock. But I went to 3 different stores locally, and every one of them pointed me in the direction of another one. Sometimes they sent me back to the... No, I said, I'm not going to mention the stores themselves.
Of course, yeah.
I don't think it would be nice. But every single one of them sent me back to the original one that I had been, and it was sort of like a little triangular relationship. That just no one had a shower curtain rail. And eventually, one of them said to me, "Llegate a Leroy Merlin." Yeah. So that's a local businessman telling me go to Spain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've actually bought a curtain rail locally. So
really?
Yes, I did. Yeah, a few years
the
ago.
actual rail.
You should have spoken. You should have spoken.
Okay, well, we'll have a chat up.
Yeah, I'll tell you later. Yeah. I think online shopping, though, has made a difference, not in terms of our consumer choice. Yeah. I like also the fact that there are now companies that are organising delivery for local customers who can't get something from an online website because they don't deliver locally. But it's made a change. But I mean, perhaps there are not many things that I miss from living in England, to be honest. But one of them is particular consumer choice when it comes to Christmas, especially, Christmas shopping. There was, a much wider selection. Obviously, you got the shopping centres and everything. That does make a big difference. Not a massive difference, though, to my life, but it's certainly an area where, particularly in the things which I would like to spend my money on, Gibraltar's perhaps a bit lacking. No, I think that there are other things where Gibraltar can offer a really good shopping experience, but they're just are not particularly interested in crystals, for example.
In certain areas.
See, I miss that about the shopping experience of a larger city or the UK, for example. Yeah, we are limited. We're getting better, in certain areas, but and like you say, online shopping is opening it up as well.
Yeah.
Books, for example, I love my books, and before I was limited to going down to the bookshop, and that's what there was. And now it's like boom, 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 and any book I want, and within days will be delivered.
Which sadly, of course, has had an impact, I'm sure, on local business as well.
Exactly.
No, but that's just the way the world is going.
There's only one bookshop left in Japan.
Yeah, just the one left now. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's almost surviving as an institution more than anything else.
Yeah.
I've just been told that there are actually 2, because there is, of course, there's the main sort of the Gibraltar bookshop outside the courts, and then there's Terry's, which is a second-hand bookshop.
Ah, yes. That's
okay,
right, yeah.
okay, okay, we get your points, Mr. Director. But yeah, generally speaking, we tend to have morphed into an online buying community, and that post office creaks at the seams every festive season.
As it did over the Christmas period. I remember there was a report about the backlog.
The backlog,
in the local news.
People were still receiving
backlog,
mail in end of January.
And in fact, I also remember that report saying that more and more people were using postal companies, so actually bypassing the local postal service just to get these products across. And in my experience, actually, a lot of them have been very, very efficient.
But even with the subject of online shopping, there are still some disadvantages to being in Gibraltar. There are a lot of companies, perhaps less and less as the years have gone by, but there are a lot of companies that when you click on the drop-down menu, there's no Gibraltar icon, whenever you input GX111AA, the Gibraltar postcode, it won't recognise it, or they might charge you. In the UK, for example, they might have free postage.
Free delivery.
In Gibraltar, whenever you hit on the postage icon,
it can be quite extortionate.
It can be quite, to the point where it's no longer beneficial to buy.
But that's where the Janito spirit again. And like Julian was saying, new companies have now been born just to service Gibraltarians, and get it delivered to a UK address, and then they just forward it on, and the charge is minimal compared to what it could have been. So we managed to bypass that as well. Janito spirit, no?
Well, I suppose whenever you have a place where you have a free market, then entrepreneurs spring up and pounce on it.
Yeah, it's a great service as well.
Local companies who do, for example, IKEA trips and bring your furniture back and set it up.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see that, especially when companies kind of like incorporate the EVA collection into your or the VAT collection when it's an overseas company into their business model.
Yeah.
Well, there's another set of categories here which perhaps we can bung into one: leisure, sports, and entertainment, because I suppose that we can talk about it in one global area. Leisure. It's always been the anecdote. If you talk to any teenager in Gibraltar, they'll always tell you there's nothing to do in Gibraltar. There's a lot more to do these days than there ever was.
Yeah,
especially when we were teenagers.
Spoiled for choice.
But nevertheless, you'll always.
But teenagers will moan about that regardless of where you live. You could be a teenager in central London, you'll still find something to moan about.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talk about like the leisure sense. I think I was having a conversation with someone. I went bowling a few weeks ago, some colleague, and we're talking about what a great facility that is, because we were talking, we were again reflecting on when we were teenagers, when there was nothing of the sort. And it really is quite a
there was,
good
but it was
facility.
kind of limited to the services community. I remember there being a bowling alley a few years ago, like 15 years ago.
There's certainly a lot more to do. But obviously, I mean, being a theatre enthusiast, London particularly is just a completely different world to me,
Yeah, of course.
And that is another thing that I one of the few things that I do miss is the access to the theatre. Although to be fair, it's not that I used to go very often either when I was based there.
Yeah,
but
but
it's
the
nice to have
ability
the
to
option.
decide. Exactly. Yeah.
And occasionally I might read about a particular play that might be on a particular theatre with a particular act, and I just kind of, I wish I could go and see that. No, but obviously it's not that easy anymore.
Yeah.
But certainly, and sadly, of course, when we think about London theatre and we access it as Gibraltarians, we think obviously about the West End and Lion King and Les Mis and everything. When the theatre scene, the off-West End theatre scene is so vibrant in London, and that's particularly what I enjoy. That the access to that level of professional theatre.
Yeah. To a completely different level. To amateur theatre, which
it's got its place, obviously.
It's got its place in Gibraltar.
I will endorse heartily, of course. But yeah, it's very good though that the cinema here is giving access to ballet,
live
opera,
now,
things that we've never had
That's
access to.
That's a good point, actually. That gives us an opportunity to see
things which
theatre in other parts of the world.
It's actually brilliant. I mean, and that's another thing. I mean, we've evolved loads. When we were growing up, we had the cinema, and then it closed for a number of years. If you remember,
In the casino for a long time.
Yeah, and then it reopened again, and still we complained, even though it revived, and it's like one film, and we get it ages after. And now, I mean, releases go concurrently with the UK.
And they have popcorn now, which they didn't have.
And we have free. Yeah, exactly.
We grew up in a cinema without popcorn.
True. And now we've got 3 or 4 movies at the same time as well. Theatre and all sorts of special events being broadcast live. So
it'd just be nice to be able to book online. That's the one,
and pay with your card. Pay with your card. I think everybody's telling Odette all the time, so I think she'll probably change
Hopefully,
it. So,
And in terms of entertainment, well, the kind of leisure and entertainment tend to merge into one another. But in terms of entertainment,
loads, music festivals.
I was just going to say
all sorts, no?
The list of festivals goes on.
Come the summer, how many do we have?
I can name 10 without taking a breath.
But it doesn't just have to be festivals. There are bands playing.
Yeah.
Every single week.
Every week.
If you're a fan of live music, which I know you are, Jonathan, you're spoiled for choice. Every single week there's a band playing.
I feel that's taken a bit of a hit.
But it's still substantial, though. There's still enough of it happening.
I feel it's taken a bit of a hit in the sense that Gibraltar's community is so spread out now. When it was only casemates, there were 4 or 5 bars, maybe only 1 or 2 of whom did live music. True. Now there's
quite a few.
There's Ocean Village. When people go out, they tend to spread out more and go to different places. And live bands performing, I can tell you from personal experience, isn't necessarily a a lucrative thing anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's still quite a lot of it happening, though.
But the choice is there.
Still,
Yeah,
it does
the
happen.
choice,
It
the
still
choice.
does happen.
I was out Friday and I was at a venue with live music. I had other friends who were at another another venue with live music, and the choice is there at least, no? And for music, surely that's a positive, no?
Perhaps, but
to a
also
degree-
in the sense that,
You're not
for
getting
example,
the numbers.
Yeah, you're not getting the audience because they're so spread out. They're spread out
But
so
more and
thinly.
more bands are also getting the opportunity to, to perform live with a crowd, and
I think it's a catch-22.
yeah.
And I think these things come in waves. They tend to even out over time. But we're going through a particular phase right now where I feel personally, it's just an opinion, that things are a little bit too spread out.
Yeah, well, we used to have 2 strong nights at the weekend, and now one of them virtually doesn't exist. It's just the
Saturday.
one night, yeah. It's just Friday night.
And curiously
nowadays.
enough, just across the border, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it is.
Saturday is the big night, and
Yeah.
Friday is just like time to chill out
Exactly.
at home.
Yeah.
And in terms of now, of course, that we're talking about in the general area of entertainment and leisure, sporting facilities. Comparison with the UK?
Well,
Again,
we haven't got UEFA Stadium still.
but it's a small town, but with the
number.
ambition of a country. No,
Yeah.
It's just, the big issue in Gibraltar is space, really.
Yes,
Yeah.
And the competing, like, for example, football clubs, they all have to play on the same pitch. In the
Yeah.
UK, that's unheard of.
Yeah. That's the thing. Space and resources. We haven't got the space, no? Sporting-wise, there's loads of clubs, loads of sports, and the list just gets, is getting longer every season.
There's
It's just space.
There's something. If you're interested in almost any sports, there's something to do. No,
Yeah.
Something like the summer sports program, for example, which I experience as a parent, and I benefit as a parent. That's unheard of in the UK, especially for free.
For free, exactly.
It's essentially. Apart from the health benefits and everything, essentially like a childcare service as well, really.
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
And
Summer camp.
It's
Summer
great for the
camp.
kids,
Yeah.
great for parents as well, and especially in the summer period, no?
Yeah.
And now look all the events we've having now. Darts tournaments, major darts tournaments, pool tournaments on Sky Sports only yesterday.
Chess festival.
So
I
many.
was actually flicking through my satellite channels yesterday, and I was looking at the sports channels because I was looking for a particular football match, and one of the Sky Sports channels came up as flaring the World Pool Masters from Gibraltar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's great, and we can access it as spectators. That obviously regenerates the sport as well. I used to play basketball in the UK. Loads of travelling, always having to find a lift from someone. 1 or 2 hours just to travel to a game. Things a lot more spread out.
But they haven't switched onto basketball over there, have they?
Not very, but still,
of course.
You'd think there'd be. This is an area far beyond a population of 30,000,
Of course,
and yet the basketball was very spread out. And one of the problems with the UK is something that they just can't help. No, it's not so much the weather as the hours of daylight. No, that is an issue with it, which you can't do anything about. You can't move it. No, and that's one thing that eventually got very frustrating. No, when I was living there, the fact that you'd go to work at 8 in the morning, it was dark. You came out at 4 in the afternoon or whatever, and it was dark again. No, and that I think also has an impact on leisure time, outdoor leisure time. The weather doesn't help as well, but. Also, the amount of time people spend travelling. No, mine was a 40-minute commute, which was actually quite short for the UK.
Yeah.
I'm a 15-minute walk from work now. That's over an hour a day that I gain of time. No, and I think that's in terms of quality of life. That makes a massive difference.
Definitely does. Yeah.
Well, in terms of the facilities, you'll find in the UK that you have absolutely everything that you want within a certain amount of distance, but you've got to be really dedicated in order to make that time available for yourself, which is what I think the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost spread out, no, it's a massive dedication to something that you might just enjoy as a hobby. If you play a sport like basketball and the stadium's a 15-minute walk away, it's something that you can really. It doesn't feel like such a massive investment of your time. It's something that you can maybe enjoy at a certain level because you don't have to be that committed to it. But options are available and services available are just, a world apart, really.
Just one more item, perhaps, that we can talk about before we go to the break. And this is a big bone of contention for anyone in Gibraltar who's had to wait perhaps a couple of years to find somewhere to live, home ownership.
Yeah.
In the UK, for example, they introduced, a few years ago, they introduced 50-year mortgages because the prices of properties were so inflated, especially in the big cities, that people were having to expand and next of kin were inheriting debt as opposed to property. But then you go to certain other areas of the UK, and say, for example, for £250,000, you can buy a 4-bedroom townhouse or a 4-bedroom detached house,
garden and everything,
which is
basically
in Gibraltar something that you would pay for a 3-bedroom in Montague Gardens. This is on the open market, of course.
Yeah.
We're not talking about
home ownership
affordable
scheme.
home ownership schemes. We're talking about the property markets, the free markets.
You get a lot more for your money there, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Per square metre, I suppose. But the home ownership schemes, I think, in the UK are not as generous as they are here, no? With the estates that have been built and everything. The rental market, though, is a lot different. I never owned a house in the UK. I just rented, but renting was more affordable and more available as well.
Yeah.
And that makes the kind of the access to property a bit more flexible. That you can just rent a property and move on, which I think it's a lot harder to do here.
I think property has always been a massive problem. Gibraltar historically has had a problem with accommodation. Obviously,
I think maybe
space.
the late 90s is when it started going pear-shaped in terms of affordability.
Yeah. But again, I think we've seen advances in that as well. I mean, for generations, entire families were living in 1 room, 2 rooms. And I mean, as you're aware, I've recently just helped to complete the latest of the co-ownership schemes. And nowadays you see people who are still at uni and have already bought their home with parents' aid or whatever. But I mean, a generation ago, nobody could do that. And you'd probably be living with your in-laws or your parents with your children in there as well, up until your 40s, mid-40s, if not later. And nowadays you've got, youngsters still at university or fresh out of uni for their first year back.
They're
accessing these schemes.
That's perhaps a positive comparison in terms of to a previous generation.
Exactly,
in Gibraltar,
and
but
that's
not a positive comparison to the UK.
To the UK, which begs the question again: should we be, comparing ourselves to the UK, or should we be comparing ourselves to ourselves and whether we've advanced and whether we're moving forward and whether we can't have everything, but for Gibraltar's, considering just Gibraltar and all its, limited options and all the things, are we doing okay? Are we there? Are we okay for ourselves? We should just, I think we should just measure ourselves against ourselves. And in fairness, when we do, I think we've come a long way in a short space of time as well, since the 90s really, when we picked up pace. We compare ourselves to the UK. Where to in the UK? We get towns our size. Half of them would even have half the things that we have as well. And again, it's because of our duality, the nature of Gibraltar. We're a town, but we're also a nation. And I think we need to really understand we're a town, but we're a nation. We can't be a full-blown nation, so we need to identify what we can have, what we can afford, what we should have, what's vital to have, what's extra or luxury, and then use that as a baseline and work from there, I think.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to take a little bit of a break and we'll come back and we'll do this. Okay, guys, see you in just a couple of minutes. It's been a pretty interesting part one. We've been talking about how Gibraltar compares to the UK in a number of areas. We're not going to obviously dive back into that now, but we're going to go straight in to the most heated area of City Pulse right now as we come towards the end of the season, and that is...
Who said what?
There we go. Bit of a delay there, but we got to it in the end. Okay, so Who Said What is our weekly quiz show, quiz game segment. And look at what we have here. My goodness. That's Ben Borrasera has done a marvellous job there. This is the City Pulse trophy for Who Said What. And we've been playing this all season. We've been saying that there's a little area there, and Ben said that he was going to put a name tag on it for the winner. But I think it would look far better if we had a little Velcro tag there, and we were able to stick the face of the winner, and then we can just have that there. All season for the next season of City Pulse. I think it's a lovely trophy and well worth the effort that's gone into it.
It's good quality.
Yeah, it's good build.
It might be yours.
He's made it himself. He's carved it out from a piece of wood. And the symmetry is beautiful. Look at that.
Have you got any words for Rebecca who
Nice
might be
job,
watching?
No, I'm feeling the pressure now.
You should be, because you're neck and neck with Rebecca. Your eagerness to appear on this Monday's episode is noted. Of course, we want to get the points in there, and we'll obviously have to have Rebecca in next week to try and make up the deficit. But this week's quote is from a local personality who, when interviewed and asked about the future of Gibraltar, said, "I am not a prophet, just an expired politician." Not a prophet, just an expired politician. And that was someone locally who was asked about the future of Gibraltar. And towards the end of the programme, we'll ask you about who you think that is. You've got about 20 minutes to think about it. In the meantime, let's go on to the press review.
Press review.
Okay, this week's press review comes to us from Kevin. Kevin, what have you got for us?
And in press review, because I like positive stories. 14th of February was Valentine's Day, but it was also International Book Giving Day, and for the first time was held and celebrated.
They're running out of days to put these things in. I mean, if you have to squeeze your day into Valentine's Day,
well, the Catalans have been doing this for decades. Book Giving Day, the Catalans actually gift a book on Valentine's Day, and there's a few other nations, but it really took off in 2013 when a book blogger thought, wanted to promote reading amongst children. Locally, our very own Ashley Henwood, who's known online as a storyteller, thought it was a good idea, decided to bring it to Gibraltar.
Is she particularly into books?
She's, she actually is into...
on the left?
Yeah, that's Ashley over there, doing World Book Giving Day, and she actually managed to collect funds and monies from businesses and individuals, and she managed to buy 400 books, which she distributed to points where children congregate or attend to, such as a hospital, the Women's Refuge, and other points across Gibraltar. Brilliant idea. I like it because obviously I'm very much into reading, and also because I think Ashley completely soaked in the spirit of community there and giving something back. And I think that was lovely. Lovely girl as well. I know her personally. And I know she was well pleased, and she's already planning a bigger and better Book Giving Day next year.
It's mostly geared towards children, this is it?
It is. The idea is to promote reading amongst children and, just gifting them a book, making reading accessible to them. But also, importantly, it's promoting, analysis, critical thought, and all these things that we tie to reading. And very importantly, also extending and expanding attention span. We know we all have an attention span in this new culture. And
sorry, what did you say?
Attention span. Gotcha. Which leads us to the second item in the news review, and Sweden. Whatever happened in Sweden?
Oh, it's poor Sweden.
And was that a problem with attention span and people not paying attention to the news? We all know what happened or what happened.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And Trump is now saying that the idea of what he said about Sweden came from a TV report that is on Fox News. Obviously, he's now attacking Fox News because Fox News, who were very pro-Trump, have now turned against him. So there might be more to that story. But
as inevitably everyone will in the long run.
But it does prompt the question, do we have an attention span problem, which I think we all agree the world has? And do many misinterpretations, misunderstanding come from people not listening to the news, not reading.
Funnily
the
enough,
news.
it's only was it last week that you mentioned the diabetes strip?
I did. Yeah, I
it
did,
was.
yeah.
It was last week.
It was
wasn't
last week,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Another example, of a story that got misinterpreted. I think.
Exactly.
I think that there was nothing more malicious than that. Really, it was just misinterpreted, possibly because of lack of attention span, possibly because of a lack of precision, with the vocabulary that people use.
It's happened that local people in Gibraltar were
Started
reposting it and sharing
without even
and it
reading
had
it.
absolutely nothing to do with Gibraltar,
course,
and it prompted the government to issue a press release
did.
the day after
The day after City Pulse. Yeah.
The government issued a press release saying,
Pulse is
"Hey
a
guys,
civic tool, yeah? City Pulse is a great civic tool.
And it's not the first time that this has happened, of course. I mean, a much bigger mistake a few weeks ago with the, again, entirely fictional Bowling Green massacre that the Trump administration made up, no?
Yeah.
Because to be perfectly fair to Trump, when he actually gave his excuses for this Sweden faux pas that he just caused, when you look at his words, he could possibly make that excuse, but someone whose job it is to communicate with people needs to communicate a little bit more precisely,
Clearly, more concisely,
and
definitely.
I find it quite ironic that he's having such a go at the media. I don't think the media has ever been or has ever had to be more responsible than it is now. If you look at the BBC and the pressure it's been under with the whole affair with Jimmy Savile and everything, it's just had to be so much more responsible in the way that it handles itself. It's not going to now start being irresponsible with the way that it tells the truth, no?
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating non-story.
Yeah. But it's all been prompted because of that. People are not listening to the news. People are not
well, the consumption remit is a lot narrower now, and people need a soundbite. They need a news flash.
And literally just a soundbite, because if you get a video on your feed, on the timelines and on your feeds, if it lasts more than a minute, you probably won't watch it. You just want something short, which again, and as a result of it, there's a bit of a resurgence of journalism from the past, which is all this explainer journalism, and journalists now feeling the need to go further into the story and explain the stories to avoid these situations. And whereas it started again as a specialist sort of a genre, niche sort of journalism, you're now seeing more mainstream media outlets, news outlets, adopting explainer journalism again. And now you got sites like BBC, CNN, all the major networks. They're releasing videos, especially now with online channels. They can do that as a supplement to the main story to make sure people get the backstory to the news. I mean, news is not just news. It's also important that the whole function of the news and journalism is to explain stories to people and make them understand the world they're living in. So
without, of course, being overly patronising.
Well, that's the danger with explainer
condescending
journalism as well. It can be condescending. So it's all about getting the right tone, the right measure as well. But it's useful, especially because people have not got the attention span. And when the big story breaks, apparently, according to Google Analytics or whatever, you find people Googling what's happened in La 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 or what is a backstory to. People want to know. People are genuinely interested, no? And it's important for the facts to be out there, for people to be able to form their own opinions. Attention span, massive problem. President Trump, leader of the world, for not paying attention to news.
Yeah.
Possibly. We don't know what the real reasons to all that were.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Julian, lead us on this week's motion.
I suppose the motion this week links quite closely to this, no? And it's something that I think most people involved, again, with my pet subject, the world of local theatre, they feel very strongly about. And it involves audience etiquette. And as as a director, as an actor, and as a spectator, I find that. And again, I don't think this is just exclusively a local issue. I think it's happening generally. The standards of just normal behaviour you'd expect in a theatre building seem to be declining fast in terms of talking over performances, in terms of restlessness, late coming, unnecessary noise, chewing wrappers, all sorts of things. And it can be very... I think part of this has to do with television and cinema culture. No, we can watch something on television, talk over it, because we know it's not going to disturb anyone who's actually on screen. But we forget that us actors, we're there. We can hear you talking. We can hear you shuffling. We can hear you coming in late. We can hear you commenting. No, and it's very, very distracting. And I think it sets a bad example to younger members of the audience who are there. I've seen people being rude to ushers who've kind of admonished people for that kind of behaviour. And obviously, it's not something you can legislate against, like a motion should be. It's a cultural thing, and I think it's the impact of television and cinema that's having on a type of culture which has always been about listening rather than watching.
Well, curiously enough, a couple of weeks ago, as you know, we GPC hosted a Viewpoint programme at Leisure Cinemas. It was the big debate, the big cannabis debate, and this was a big. It was one where audience participation was a big deal. You know, the thing was sold out. Well, you can't say sold out because the tickets were free, but it was booked out. It was booked out. Every seat was taken. And some people had to be turned away, unfortunately. It was a first-come, first-served thing. Some people reserved their tickets early. They managed to get there on time. Some people... Anyway, it was full. This was a live television debate. People were buying popcorn outside and snacks. And I thought, wow, people... in a way, I took it as a compliment because, you know, people were... there for the entertainment value, you know, for the experience. But I just thought, I mean, I never really put the two things in the same in the same basket. You know, you're there for a live TV audience and people are buying snacks. Anyway, it was on the same night as 50 Shades of Grey, so I thought we did quite well to fill out the auditorium.
It's interesting, though, that despite everything I've just said and the experience I've had with my Jib Talks hat, I have not experienced actually. The audiences in Jib Talks tend to be quite settled and very attentive and everything. But
I suppose because I don't know, you're not going there for the entertainment value.
Possibly, but
no, you're going there. You're going there for the cultural, educational value of it, and that just
you'd hope that's what people go to the theatre for as well. No,
I don't know, theatre, entertainment, really.
I'll say. I think there's a big cultural.
I suppose
value as well,
there's a bit of both.
Stories were great.
I mean, I've literally stopped on stage. Our phone went off. I think this is another issue, of course. Phones, no. I just stopped what I was doing, looked at a member of the audience a bit sternly, and then carried on. And that's happening more and more.
What, in the middle of the play?
And there's more and more reports in professional theatre in England of actors who just stopped their performances, reprimanded an audience member, and then carried on with the performance.
But do they do it in character?
No, not at all. Not at all.
They break character.
They break character and everything. And I mean, it's a shame that they have to resort to that. But on the other hand, I can understand it, especially a phone going off. You know, you've got warnings. You've been told to turn your phone off. So.
There's a culture of el no saber tan, I think, which is just being eroded over time, and it's due to all these modern influences. I mean, screen consumption, it's at its highest level. We're always consuming from screen. So, as you rightly pointed out, I think we just, especially newer generations who have not known any different, for them it's normal. I mean, I was in a seminar 2 weeks ago in a space no bigger than a classroom at school. You know, and it wasn't that busy in there. And you had the speaker who travelled into Gibraltar just to deliver that. He was, you know, giving his talk there, and people were talking out loud. Go on, Paddy Vecino, and you're like, how can this be? I mean, there's a speaker there.
Where do you start? Just out of curiosity about because I know that some auditoriums in the UK, for example, they have a cut-off point. They close the doors once the performance has started. Gibraltar, perhaps, we're a little bit more relaxed about that. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's if I had my way, I'd start every performance bang on time. No, but unfortunately, you might get more disruption afterwards by not holding the curtain and waiting for some latecomers. No, I think we need to kind of almost like retrain audiences in a way, and not just in theatre, but in many things.
Yeah,
no?
I agree.
In cinemas, in public events, and like you said, something like a seminar. No, I think that the art of listening.
Yeah.
Is starting to kind of deteriorate a little
big
bit.
time,
and we
big time.
forget that theatre, I mean, you mentioned the word auditorium, the root of the word there is from listening. In Shakespeare's time, people spoke about going to hear a play, not to watch a play. Peter Brook did a production in Japan, which was 9 hours long, and he could do it as a 9-hour stretch. When he took it to cultures which are not as oral, he had to condense it and do it in like 1.5 hour chunks almost. Attention span, again, like you were saying earlier.
It's a new culture, no? And curiously enough, you mentioned about viewpoint and people having their snacks and everything. But then again, I mean, one of a show which is very much followed in Gibraltar, especially by a certain generation, is a show on Spanish television which lasts for 4 hours, and it's completely permissible for the audience to be munching away on their rolls, and not just the audience, presenters, and they get up and go to the toilet during the live program, and they use their mobile phones. So, I mean, people have been watching this for a few years now, so it's become accepted behaviour, the norm. And people, like, if they see that's happening on the telly, they think, well, I can go on Viewpoint and munch away on my crisps and the like.
Sign of the times, no?
Okay, it is, unfortunately.
Just before we go tonight, it's time to wrap up the programme with one of the last segments on this show of Who Said What?
Who said what?
Okay, guys, the big moments. So here's the quote once again. When asked about the future of Gibraltar, this man said, I am not a prophet. I am only an expired politician. Okay, we're going to do this on 3. 1, 2, 3.
No, because I don't know, so go ahead. It was 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, or recently, no? A couple of weeks at the most that was said, but for the life of me, I can't remember. And I don't want to mention anyone in case I call them an expired politician and they're not.
I don't recognise the quotes, but I'm going to try and make an educated guess with my fingers crossed and maybe a very tense Rebecca waiting at home. Peter Montegrifo?
Nope, I'm afraid not.
I was thinking Peter as well. Peter too. I was thinking Peter too.
Do you want to have a pot shot at this?
I've been rattling my brain. Not Damon, but Damon put in a very good piece where he's...
Just give a guess, just say one.
I'll go for Damon, because I didn't get to read that piece in its entirety, so I'm going to go for Damon.
Well, neither of you are correct, I'm afraid. It was, in fact, Sir Joshua Hassan in his last ever televised interview.
Oh, wow.
Before his death.
I played Sir Joshua Hassan, so I should be proud of myself.
I think we'll give you minus points for that.
Sorry.
Someone's laughing at home. Someone's laughing at home.
Oh, yeah, I can hear Rebecca from here.
Cackling away.
So she has one opportunity to pip you to the post next week. I suppose we'll see where that goes. And on that note, we'll end the programme here. Guys, thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion tonight.
Thank you.
We've got 2 more weeks left of City Pulse, and then after that, it will be we'll be turning over to the Powered Room, but it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks before we wrap up the programme, purely because of this. Thank you very much for watching at home, and thanks to everyone in the studio, obviously, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.